It's been 5 years since I started calisthenics, and before I was even building the foundational strength for the pull-ups or dips, I already knew from back then I was trying to get the handstand push-up. So in this video, I'm going to be showing you exactly how I train for unlocking my first handstand push-up. So the handstand push-up is an advanced calisthenic exercise that's a lot more achievable than most people think. But without understanding the progressions and the exercise nature of this exercise, it's going to be ultimately impossible. So let's dig a little bit deeper into what this exercise really is. The handstand push-up is a compound movement that works both the anterior and posterior chain of the body. For the upper body, it primarily targets the shoulders, upper chest, triceps, and core. Secondarily, it also requires some adequate strength in your glutes to keep your body upright and stable. Some other things we need to also take into account is the technical ability to execute a movement like this, which consists of three things: balance, stability, and body awareness. Now, the most underrated benefit to this exercise is that it's going to genuinely teach you how to control your own body weight. And to be honest, man, most people don't know how very little control they have over their own bodies. Like, no cap, man. Now, that being said, how did I obtain my first handstand push-up? Well, for starters, we have to fulfill the first prerequisite. And that's going to be establishing the balance and stability component through the handstand hold. I can't stress this enough, man. Make sure that you have a very strong handstand hold before even thinking to progressing over to the next exercises. Now, to kind of give a practical standpoint, I want you to shoot for at least a 15-second hold for each set on the handstand. If you're not getting to that point, then that just means you're going to have a weaker foundation whenever you want to proceed on to the next progressions. So make sure, okay, listen closely. Make sure that you hold yourself to a high standard and get this 15-second hold handstand with very little to no movement and instability. This is like a basic level gymnastic skill, and I'm sure that they can agree that having a very strong handstand is the foundation for the rest of the floor movements. And the same thing applies to us. Now, Cobra, what if I can't even hold a handstand? How am I going to be able to learn the handstand push-up? Well, I got you, because I myself 5 years ago didn't even know how to hold a handstand when I made the bold statement of trying to unlock my first handstand push-up before even building the necessary strength with the basic movements like the push-ups, pull-ups, dips, and so on. Maybe I had a good base for push-ups, but pull-ups and dips were definitely lagging compared to the push-ups for sure. But anyways, the first progression that you want to work on is going to be the pike walks. Consider this as the first step to learning how to hold the handstand. It's going to essentially just help condition your shoulders and get you right and primed for the later progressions. Now, I recommend getting about 8 to 10 full walks for 3 sets. Then leveling up after that is going to be the pike hold. Pretty much the same as the pike walks, but this time we're focusing on holding the pike position for up to 20 to 30 seconds for 3 sets again. Then there's 2 different routes you can take once you're comfortable with the pike holds. Either you can start doing the elevated pike walks or immediately go on to the elevated pike holds. Now, personally, from my experience, I've just stuck with the elevated pike holds. I find that it has worked perfect for my strength standard at that time, so it doesn't really matter, but both will help continue on that calisthenic journey for learning the handstand hold and eventually the handstand push-up. So after the pike walks, after the pike hold, after the elevated pike walks or pike hold, is then going to be the handstand kick-ups, okay? So you're going to want to start kicking up to the wall. And the way I went about this is by performing 3 sets of the handstand kick-ups for about 6 to 10 reps. And after completing those sets, I will follow it up with like 2 to 3 sets of holds for as long as possible. In addition to that, I would alternate between back facing the wall and also chest facing the wall for my holds. But if I were to recommend you just one, then I would probably say chest facing the wall handstand holds. And this is just because we already got some time to condition how we would kick up into a handstand with your back facing the wall. But to properly emulate the handstand position, the body alignment, the mental cues needed, I believe it's just more similar to the chest facing the wall variant, since you'll be forced to engage in a posterior pelvic tilt by driving your hips forward. Whereas whenever your back is facing the wall, the likelihood of you practicing the handstand with poor technique with the arched back increases. And ultimately, this is going to be very, very hard to rewire yourself from learning how to undo the bad techniques such as arching your back and depending too much on the wall by having your heels placed heavily on the wall. It's just going to make your progress that much longer. Like, trust me, all right? Now, this then leads on to the next step on how I learned the handstand. And it's actually by doing handstand kick-ups, but without the wall. And to be honest, I had no set down written structure. My whole objective was to do as much sets per week as much as I can. So the name of the game of this really is attempting to kick up to the handstand without the wall and have a high frequency training approach. And as I said in many of my videos before, whenever you want to learn a new movement, whether it's the pull-ups, dips, push-ups, and especially in this case, handstands, these are going to be best learned and practiced over time with a high training frequency approach, meaning you're going to be training this movement, particularly the handstand, multiple times per week. But you're not going to be doing the same thing every single session. That's why we're going to be using like the kick-ups without the wall every now and then per week. And then also for like actual strength conditioning and volume work, we'll be using the wall handstand kick-ups. So I think pretty much every session or two, I would do about 5 to 10 attempts without the wall, try to see if I can hold a handstand. If not, it's just a way to kind of just also not be dependent on the wall, eliminate that fear factor of trying to kick up into the handstand without the wall. So there's a lot of good benefits to it. And it's really just more of a mental thing, because once you hold a handstand on the wall for up to like 20-30 seconds, you pretty much have the strength to do a handstand. If you've been doing the kick-ups on the wall as well, you already have the strength to do it, but you're just missing that mental link, right? That mental cue to actually hold it, know how to actually balance yourself, how to stabilize yourself with your glutes, your core, engaging a posterior pelvic tilt, all of that good stuff. So this is why doing these attempts is very important into your actual handstand program. All right, enough about the handstand. Let's get into the actual part of how I actually learned the handstand push-up by building the shoulder strength needed to perform the movement. And that's actually by doing a very similar approach to the handstand training. It's all about utilizing your progressions. In order to establish the necessary overhead strength, we need to start off with the pike push-ups and eventually work up our way to the wall handstand push-ups. But this gap can be huge for a lot of people. So when I tell you focus on the progressions, okay, that's not to be taken lightly. Really hammer down the progressions before you move on to the next step. That said, I recommend aiming to get about 10 reps on the pike push-ups for about 3 sets. And make sure the reps are clean too, meaning you're in a strong pike position, hips are up. As you're coming down, you're bringing your forehead to the floor past your hands, coming back up with a full elbow extension, and boom, that's a full rep. Oh, and by the way, these are definitely going to be burdening your shoulders, like no cap, man. Coming up next are the elevated pike push-ups. Now, I'm going to be completely transparent with you guys. I never actually took my time with this progression. I know. I shouldn't have jumped the gun, but I did. So I can't even cap and say that I programmed these into my routine because I went straight for the back facing the wall handstand push-ups. So what you don't want to do is skip the elevated pike push-ups because, like I said, the gap is vast compared to the standard pike push-ups to the wall handstand push-ups. Like, for real. Similar to the pike push-ups, I recommend getting about 3 sets of 10 reps on the elevated pike push-ups. And these two exercises are pretty much the same thing, but since we're going to be placing our feet at an elevated surface, that's going to be increasing the leverage, aka making the intensity a little bit more difficult on our shoulders because of the position of our body. Then to mimic the full, or I would say 80 to 90% of the full handstand push-up variation is going to be the wall handstand push-up. So notice how we're gradually increasing the intensity as our legs are getting higher and higher as the progressions proceed on forward. Now, if you took your time with the elevated pike push-ups, the gap from the elevated pike push-ups to the wall handstand push-ups shouldn't be that big. But for me, it was because I didn't take my time with the middle progression. So yeah, that being said, I actually recommend you to start doing the chest facing the wall handstand push-ups. With that, you want to be able to do about 6 to 10 reps each set. And the reason why I recommend chest facing the wall over back facing the wall push-ups is because this is going to better mimic the freestanding handstand push-up, similar to the reasoning I provided as to why the chest facing the wall handstand holds will prove to be a better carryover to the actual freestanding handstand. Now, while you're building strength, right, with the handstand push-ups on the wall, I actually recommend you start doing handstand push-up negatives. By this stage, I'm going to assume you have a decent handstand hold of at least 5 to 8 seconds on a pretty consistent basis to perform the negatives. This is something that I actually implemented a lot, especially since I didn't have the strength to do the positive, aka the concentric portion. And because we're naturally stronger at the eccentric portion of any exercise, the process of lowering yourself during exercise will have the advantage of learning what muscles to engage to position our body without the wall for the purpose of learning the full handstand push-up. Now, for me personally, I would separate the handstand push-ups on the wall with the handstand push-up negatives on separate days. For example, if I'm focusing on my upper body, I think back then I was doing like a push-pull leg split. On the push day, I would only do the handstand kick-ups just to kind of work on my handstand holds. And then ultimately, as the actual hypertrophy strength work, I would just do handstand push-ups on the wall. Then on my lower body day, like a non-upper pushing day, for example, lower or pull, I would then attempt to do handstand push-up negatives at the beginning of my session, because what I found out is that it makes it easier to program throughout the week. Remember, high frequency, plus it doesn't hinder my training sessions that leads on to like the next workout. Whether I'm doing handstand push-up negatives one session on my leg day, it's not going to mess up my push day like the next day or two coming forward. So it just makes more sense to me. So I recommend not doing both at the same session, especially if you're learning it. Now, if you're doing handstand push-ups for reps without the wall, like at my level, then utilizing handstand push-up negatives is a great drop set to kind of just get more volume for that specific exercise. But this is a beginner video, so I'm gonna assume you probably don't know how to do them just yet, or at least perfected it, you know. Man, so to wrap all this up, right? One, learning the complex movement called the handstand push-up without the wall. All right, it's going to be best to break it down into chunks by focusing on developing the strength and balance with the right exercises within the right sessions of your training week. Get to a point of holding a strong handstand for up to 15 to 20 seconds, as well as conditioning your overhead strength with the chest facing the wall handstand push-ups for up to 10 reps. And then finally, transitioning to both elements consisting of balance and strength with the handstand push-up negatives. And by that time, you should be able to get your first handstand push-up. But hey, what do I know? If you want to see more content like this, be sure to follow me, man. I'm the Tough Fitness Guy out here. No cap.
Cobra Trains, he's up next. Make sure y'all subscribe to him. He's number one out here.
He's the toughest fitness guy out here.